I need to find a place. I need to find a place to put this. It's very small in the background. Hi, I'm Anne and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a review for the first book of the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. Shadow and Bone is the first book. There are definitely some things I liked about this book, but boy is it a mess in so many ways. So I'm going to briefly overview of why I'm reading it, then we're going to go to the vlog, and then I'm going to come back and give you my overall thoughts in the end. Okay, so let's go. So I'm actually reading this book partially because the TV series is going to be coming out soon, and my boyfriend loves this series and he's going to make me watch the TV series version. So I was like, well, I should probably read the books before I see the show. I tried to read this book a year or two ago. I ended up DNFing it, but I decided to give it another go and just read the rest of the series. I have the other two books over here, which I'm going to be reading, and I'm actually going to be coming out with one review for this series per week. So for the next 3 weeks, I'm devoting entirely to these books. Why am I shooting myself in the foot? I don't know. So we're going to go switch to the vlog of me actually reading the beginning, and then I will be right back to share with you my thoughts of the ending and then overall general thoughts. Okay, so I am currently about 50 pages into this book. I have a lot of thoughts already and I'm not even that far in. The things I like are definitely the world. I'm fascinated about what's going on. There's these Grishna that dress in different robes, and depending on what color robe you have, Grishna are the magic users of this world, but depending on what kind of color of robe you have, red, blue, purple, I think, you are a different type of magic user, and then there's also on the cuffs. So I'm really confused about all that, but I'm really fascinated by it. And then there's also the shadow fold, where this land was kind of cut in half by something, and it's all darkness and blackness. And I also love the plot. Leigh Bardugo does action perfectly well. The way it builds tension when... Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So it starts off with Alina and Mal, who are two orphans. They've been taken in by a duke, and then they become these, I'm gonna say, soldiers, kind of. Mal is a trader or something, where he goes out hunting and brings in animals, and Alina is a cartographer, a very bad cartographer, but she and Mal are going to go through the Shadowfold in order to get to the other side to do hunting, and she's supposed to do her job, and they go into the fold, get attacked by a bunch of these flying creatures, and she ends up trying to defend Mal and ends up losing consciousness and brightness of light. As it turns out, she's a sun summoner. I'm really intrigued by where the plot is going, but here are the few things I'm not liking about it. Alina is not that great of a protagonist right now. Maybe this over the story she's going to come more into herself, but pretty much right now she doesn't really have much of a motivation. She's just a little bit fearful, and she likes Mal, her best friend from childhood, and that's all we know about her. I feel like she doesn't have any goal in mind, and it could be, I don't want to be a cartographer, I want to find something else that I'm passionate about. It could be I'm obsessed with Mal and I want him, but you could make the argument that her motivation is to get Mal, but she's not directly trying to achieve that goal, so it doesn't feel like it. So right now for me, even if the motivation is super tiny, I want to have my character have a motivation, and I just, even if it's literally to get food to eat. But right now she has no motivation, and so it doesn't feel very compelling for me to read, which is why I DNF'd this book to begin with, because I wasn't compelled to read her character. Mal is pretty generic. He is this super hot guy, and she's been in love with him for years, and he just thinks they're friends. Well, we'll see if he does or not. I have a prediction that he's liked her for a long time, and I don't know. We will see. And then we meet the Darkling. I just met the Darkling in the last chapter, and he's a angsty goth wannabe. And there's also a lot of I'm going to say stereotyped or tropey scenes that I'm not really enjoying. Like there's this scene where Alina and Mal are beside a road and they're talking, and suddenly he like grabs her and pulls her into his arms to keep the Darkling's carriage from like running her over, and then like they realize like he's holding her, and then, you know, he lets her go all dramatically, and she's like blushing, she's like, oh, and it's just like such a stereotype to have in romance books that I'm like, why is this in a fantasy YA? I just feel like right now just a little bit of the world is getting like left behind for like angsty teen drama, and I do not like angsty teen drama. If it was realistic, I would have no problem with it, but it's like so stereotyped. Same thing later on in the scene, she like uses her sun powers, or the Darkling forces her to use them, and she like collapses afterwards, and the Darkling like grabs her into his arms. Even when we meet the Darkling, you know, because here's this like powerful, super influential guy, and he's like barely older than her and super handsome. You know, I don't remember exactly what they called him, but like the descriptions were just like, he's a hot hunk. I'm like, okay, is that all? Like he's kind of hilarious too, because he's like a super gangsty like goth teenager, and I love it. But also like when it comes to compelling characters, that is not a compelling characteristic. I'm sorry. Also, the book starts off with a prologue of when Mal and Alina are kids, and so far I've not seen any point of that prologue. Like, what was the point of that? I may change my mind later if it like comes up important later. It felt like just an introduction to what the Grishna are, and it didn't actually help us understand any of the characters better. I'm also like really curious to why Leigh Bardugo includes so much like Russian names, Russian terms. I just don't see the connection between Russia, because it's a strictly fantasy world and it doesn't feel like connected to Russia. But, you know, there may be more connection later, so I will see. I really hope they don't do it, because right now it feels like they're doing it like this, where she's just a passive protagonist and she's kind of just getting pulled along, because, you know, she doesn't make the decision to do the magic. You know, she kind of just says, you know, this is it, this is the end, and then like magic like spurts out of her, and you know, it kind of feels anticlimactic, because I'm like, well, she didn't make that decision. It's not her motivation. So, and then, you know, she gets taken in by the guards because they saw her do this magic. And then the Darkling's like, ooh, I'm going to keep her, you know, captive or whatever, or protect her. And, you know, it just feels like everything is happening not because of any of her actions. And I really dislike that in books in general. So, yeah, I mean, that may change. I really would love to see her come into herself, and like maybe she starts off as like more of a passive protagonist, but by the end she's pushing a lot of the action. You know, I'm going to keep my mind open for this book. So yes, I feel like that was a lot of thoughts for literally the first 50 pages. It's not even that far. I probably won't update you till I get to like the halfway mark, so 150, I'm assuming, something like that, so I can give you more like general views of, you know, the book overall. So I will see you then. Okay, it is a few days later, and I am updating you that I'm currently halfway done with the book. I'm page 180 something, and it's like 350 pages. So yeah, about halfway done. I still have pretty mixed feelings about the book, to be honest. Many mixed feelings, but there are quite a few good things I'm enjoying. I'm really enjoying the world and the like lore and myths we're learning about. We're learning more about the different robes of the Grishna and what powers they contain. Like the robes are bulletproof. There's like years of history of all these different types of Grishna. So really interesting, that whole lore, even though I can't remember half the names. I still don't get quite why there's this fascination with Russian, but I also see that certain of the different countries around them look to be like of a different country. So I have taken notes on what the countries were called. So like Ravka is the country we're in. That's where Alina's from, and it's kind of more Russian. And then there's like Shuhan, which to me sounds so much like China, because Han is literally what the people of China are referred to as. So Shuhan is like more Chinese, I assume, and Fjordans, I think that's how you pronounce it. That's more like, I think of Norse, so like Sweden, Norway, that area up there. Kirch, I'm not sure. It's weird, but no point. It does seem like Bardugo is playing on the real world a little bit, which is why she may have chosen Russia. I don't know. I still don't see like a big, brilliant connection. So here's where the plot has been going since I last updated you. So Alina has been taken by the Darkling, or sent by the Darkling to this city, Alta. Forgive me if I mispronounce anything, because this is the first time reading the book and I don't know how to pronounce anything. But so she's taken there for her safety because a lot of people will want her because she's a sun summoner, and no sun summoner has been heard of in, years or centuries. And the whole point is that she may be powerful enough to get rid of the shadow fold that, I explained it in the last clip, I think, where it's like this darkness that can't be permeated and there's all these monsters inside, and it was actually created by a past Darkling, like the current Darkling's like great-great-grandfather or something like that. I don't remember, but he like went mad with greed, and so he created this shadow fold, which I really love, like the premise of that it is man's greed that leads to man's downfall. I love that theme. That's like one of my favorite themes in literature. And so she's taken to Os-Ata to, I'm gonna go to wizarding school, because that's pretty much what she's at right now. She has to go to be trained to use her powers. So she goes to different people. Like there's this military trainer. He doesn't have magic, but he trains them to fight. And then there's this old lady who is amazing. She might be my favorite character of the book. And she's trying to teach Alina to use her magic. And then there are all these like girls and drama going on between like all the Grishna, because they're all being trained here. It's like a training Grishna school. So it's like a wizard training school, okay, which I was not expecting from this book. And I feel like it's moving so slow. Like and I think it's because the focus of this book is more on like teen drama and teen angst, as opposed to actually building a fantasy world or building the conflict. Like so far we do not know anything else about like the enemy. And I'm not sure if like the enemy is just the other countries like Fjordans or Shuhan, or if it is like the monsters in the Shadowfold. I'm just like really unclear about who we're against. Like it seems to be just this like vague baddie that we're against, which I don't personally like. I like to have like a personification of a villain in fantasy. In this book, like I feel like there's no like villain. In fact, the main conflict we have so far is Alina trying to use her powers, because she can use it if she has an amplifier, which the Darkling is a like living amplifier, but a lot of amplifiers just like a claw of a raven, but she can't summon her powers on her own. So the main reason, it turns out, why she can't use her powers is the stupidest reason. I'm sorry. So like I was thinking it's something like she's been suppressed, or for some reason her magic hasn't manifested. No, it's because she has a crush on Mao and she didn't want to leave him when she was a kid. So when the Grishna tested her, she suppressed her magic, which I feel like you would notice that and like realize that like after she realizes she's a sun summoner for literally half the book. She's denying it. She's like major in denial land that she has these powers. But she knows she does. But she's like, no, I can't control them. And then she's like, yeah, but when I was a kid and the Grishna came to test me to see if I was a Grishna, I kind of suppressed it. Excuse me. So I could stay with Mao because I didn't want to be alone. I'm like, okay. Like, that's the only reason she can't use her magic. So I assume that now that she can use her magic halfway through, we're going to, like, see her actually using it. Now, let me get to more of, like, the teen angsty elements of this, which driving me crazy. So there's like a whole bunch of very petty, jealous girls at the capital, because of course there are, and everyone loves the Darkling, and like Alina is his favorite currently, so like all the girls are jealous of her, but like there's certain girls that try to make friends with her, you know, backhanded. There's also the one girl I really enjoy, Genya, I think her name would be pronounced. She is a tailor, so she can like overmake people by making them prettier. I don't know the best way to describe it, but she is a Grishna, obviously, but she's considered one of the servant class, and so she kind of befriends Alina, and I really like her, but the rest of the people at the capital seem like horrible human beings. And it's weird. So far, I have learned very little more about the Darkling. I was expecting to like learn more about his character, his motivations, things like that. But he's like a very angsty teen goth boy. That's pretty much his entire arc so far. Like he wants to undo his problems, his grandfather's or his great-grandfather's curse, the Shadowfold. He wants to get rid of that. He wants to protect his kingdom. They also try to make him relatable by saying like, yeah, he likes to eat with, you know, average people, and he doesn't like all his Grishna to have these fancy food of the capital. He wants them to eat the food of the peasants, so they don't get like too detached, which newsflash, dude, they're already way detached. Anyway, but so they like try to make him relatable in any way possible. But the problem is we're not around him. And when we are, there's this like intense sexual chemistry between him and Alina. And that's all. One thing that really annoyed me earlier in the book was when they're traveling to the city, and Alina is traveling with some of the Darkling's guards. They get attacked. The Darkling is not with them. And what happens? You know, she gets dragged out. They're about to kill her, blah, blah, blah. They're all fighting. Everything's mayhem. And of course, the Darkling comes in and saves them all. And I'm like, dude, you could not have been like 5 minutes behind them to get there that quick. Okay, I'm sorry. Why weren't you just traveling with them? Because that's exactly what he does after that scene, is he's like, yeah, get on my horse and, you know, you ride with me. And I'm like, okay, but why weren't you there like 5 minutes ago? Like, at least a few of the guards got killed. Like, if he was that close, like, why? Does he have like super speed that he just like heard what was happening and came like 100 miles in like 2 minutes? I don't know what's happening, but that was a really stupid scene. And they have a lot of silly scenes like that where it takes me out of the narrative of like this unique fantasy world to be like, oh my gosh, this is such like a teen stereotypical cringy drama trope. Like, that's how I feel about so many scenes in this book. But the problem is they're mixed with scenes that are really intriguing as we learn about the world and about Lena's powers. And I feel really bad. I feel like this is turning into a rant review, and I need to stop talking. I'm probably going to like stop and make myself like not do an update until I finish the book. I want to just like run through it and finish it tonight. I'm hoping it's going to be better, and I am determined to not only finish this book, but read the next 2 books, even if I drive myself towards the brink of insanity. I feel really bad that I don't like this book that much. I'm at this point going between like 2 to 3 stars because the world is really good. So I want to give the world like 5 stars, but I want to give like the characters and especially Alina like 1 star. So I think I may go in the middle somehow, maybe like 2 to 3 stars. We will see. And I will see you when I finish the book. Hopefully I will have more positive views on it. Okay. And I am back, and I just finished the book last night, so my thoughts are still a little bit jumbled. Let me just say, last time I updated you, I was like 180 pages in. I will say that about page 250, I really started to enjoy this book more. I feel like the beginning, I was really ranty, and don't get me wrong, like, I still hated all the main characters, but there was actually some interesting stuff that was happening, and the action was really well done. One of the things I mentioned in, like, a previous section is that I really love how Bardugo does action scenes. It's just great, even if I hate all the characters and what's going on. Like, the action scenes are enjoyable. So one thing I really liked about the ending, I think, is because it's a lot more heavily action focused for the last 100 pages, and I kind of like that. I feel like I should say this, before we continue, this is going to be a full spoiler review. I feel like I had a plan in my mind that I was going to do part not spoiler and part spoiler, but you know what? We're just going to throw in and do full spoilers. So, spoilers for like the last 100 pages. Click away from the video if you don't want to be spoiled about the ending. So, plot twist, the Darkling's actually a villain, because with that name, he's totally a good guy. Let me just say that early on, like, I didn't see him becoming, like, the big mastermind, but I didn't think he was a good person. Like, we didn't know much about him, but he's acting selfishly. But I just didn't see him being, like, the cool hero. So when there was that twist that, yeah, turns out he actually wants to gain control over Alina's power so he can expand the Shadowfold and kind of destroy all his enemies and take power of the world and take over the kingship for himself. I was kind of confused in the beginning of how, like, the hierarchy worked, because for some reason I thought the Darkling was in charge. Turns out the king was in charge and the king's just incompetent. And it seems like the Darkling kind of rules most things, but my point is I wasn't surprised by like the twist of him being the villain. Saying that, I did like at least they moved to having like a straight up villain, because one of my complaints I think in the last clip was there wasn't a clear villain for most of the book. So I loved when they actually brought the Darkling in to be the actual villain. So I appreciated that. I also loved that we found out that the old woman that was training Alina, turns out she is the Darkling's mother. She's like hundreds of years old, and she actually helps Alina escape and get away from the Darkling's evil plan. As it turned out, the Darkling, I mentioned this in the first clip, he claimed that his ancestor created the Shadowfold. Turns out he was the guy who created the Shadowfold, and he just lives for hundreds of years. Like, he's a lot older than he looks, because they describe him as being like barely older than Alina, and I'm pretty sure Alina is like 17 or something, so he does not look that old. And you know, which brings out the question, like, why does his mother look like an old woman when she probably could look young? Maybe it's just a choice. I don't know. But I did enjoy, like, where the end of the book went. I loved that they brought Mal, who's kind of the love interest in the very beginning with Alina, back in to play a more prominent role. Again, the weird, like, love triangle. I'll get to my predictions at the end of the video as to where I think the next book will go. But for the most part, I liked the ending of this book, the last 100 pages, much more than the previous ones. But I still hate Alina. She drives me crazy. She does not act on her own. Rarely ever. There's only one scene in the entire book where I feel like she truly acted on her own, and it was kind of because she was forced into it. Like, everything she does. So for the first beginning of the book, so for the first like 250 pages of the book, she's pretty much doing everything that the Darkling tells her to do. Or like those people that are training her, the old woman, the guy from Shuhan who's teaching her how to fight. She's learning from them all these things, but she's kind of just going along with everything. And then when she learns that the Darkling is kind of not so good as he, seems to be from his mother, she is told by the mother, okay, go across the Shadowfold to safety. And which seems like a stupid idea, because I'm sorry, you're not going to escape the Darkling. I would think it would be a wiser decision to like find out more and like figure out how to defeat him from within. But you know what, whatever. Okay. So she just follows the old woman's advice. So she's not making her own decisions. She's just doing what the old woman told her to do. And she ends up almost getting to the fold and then getting kind of surrounded by guards, but then she runs into Mal, who turns out he has deserted at this time, so he's come to rescue her, and they decide, well, mostly it's Mal who decides this, they're going to go up north, try to kill the stag themselves, which was supposed to be something that the Darkling gave to Alina to amplify her magic, so they're going to go up north, kill the stag themselves, get the amplifier, so that turns out the amplifier will actually let the Darkling control Alina, which is very vague, and it doesn't turn out at all like that, so I don't know. That was just a weird plot point. And so it's kind of like a race for Mal and Alina to get up there, but it's not like she's making her decision. She's just going with what Mal tells her they should do. And the only like main decision she makes is when they actually find the stag, she realizes how beautiful it is, and she realizes, I just can't kill it. And of course, you know, the Darkling steps into the field and shoots the stag, and Mal and Alina are captured. The amplifier of the stag's horns, antlers, are put on Alina, so she's under the Darkling's control. So if he's like, oh, do your magic, her body just does it. She doesn't have a choice anymore. And so he decides to go into the shadow fold and destroy a bunch of things, and while they're in there, just kill Mal, because of course. And so Alina's forced to go along with it because she can't control. And then suddenly she like has a vision of the deer, and the deer's like, no, I was like coming to you in these dreams for the last few days because to tell you that like you do have control. The Darkling doesn't have control. And so she just like overcomes the control because apparently she spared the deer, or stag. I don't know why I keep calling it deer. I'm sorry. The stag, because she spared its life, and now it is like has blessed her or whatever. I didn't really get that part. And so she's able to like reclaim her powers, and she like performs the cut, which I did mention earlier that in a early battle scene when she was being transported from to the city where she was supposed to be protected after she was found out to be a sun summoner. She was rescued by the Darkling, and the Darkling actually cut the guy that was about to kill her in half. And it's called the cut, the magic thing that he did, and no one else can do it apparently but the Darkling. But at the end of the book, I mean, lo and behold, Alina's able to do it, and she cuts the boat literally in half. I think she cut something before that. I don't remember, but point was, she cuts things, and her and Mal escape, and that's how the book ends, is them escaping and a lot of people on the boat in the shadow fold possibly dying. And I just felt like nowhere did she really make a decision for herself. Like, she never had motivations in this book besides like, I like Mal, he's cool. That's the only motivation she had. Like, even after she escaped from the Darkling and after he was completely a douchebag to her, she's not even like got revenge or has her goal to like bring him down. Even by the end of the book, I don't see her at all saying, we need to take down the Darkling any way we can. It's just like, yeah, we probably should. And I just did not feel any motivation from her. So now that I blathered on a lot about everything, let me give you my overall thoughts of this book. And I'm going to condense it into like different sections. So I'm going to talk about the world, the characters, the plot, etc. Okay, first of all, the world, because it was by far my favorite part of this book. Not only was it really interesting to see like how the society was built, how the Grisha magic systems worked, of all the different abilities that different Grisha had. It was really fascinating. It was also fascinating to see their society and culture, and she not only saw, Alina, I should say, not only saw like the capital city, all this wealth, but she also saw the impoverished and poorer areas. I really enjoyed it. I also learned like a tidbit when I was talking to my boyfriend. He knows a lot more about this world, and he said that Six of Crows, which I read a while back, and I absolutely loved that one. The first book I gave 5 stars. The second one I think I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed that so much better than this book. But in that one's set in like the America equivalent of this world, whereas Ravka is like Russia, and Shuhan is, I believe, China. There's also Fjorda is like Sweden and the northern things, and there's one that's like Kurth or something like that. I don't remember, but that is like England or Europe or something like that. So it really is intriguing how Leigh Bardugo created this like universe with all these countries that are equivalent or kind of similar to countries that really exist. I'm also intrigued. My boyfriend gave little hints of this, but he's trying not to spoil anything for me. And he mentioned that there is going to be a lot more powers that you learn that the Darkling can do. So I'm curious to see what more powers he has. If the world was really boring, this book would have gotten definitely a 1-star for me, because the world for me was the best part and the only part that I really thoroughly enjoyed all the time. All the way through, I was fascinated by the world. No complaints about the world, honestly, because it's kind of like I personally thought it was kind of a soft magic system. I wasn't highly confused by how things worked, but I also found myself like learning more and more as the story continued. So there was like that base level of like, this is what you need to understand to enter this world, but then you kind of dug deeper as the story continued, and I really loved that. Next, characters. I hate Alina. Have I mentioned that enough? I also feel like I pronounce her name like Lena as opposed to Alina. I don't know. I just say it quickly, I think. She's really annoying. I've talked enough about how she completely lacks motivation. She's also very easily manipulated, which I understand that may be what Leigh Bardugo is trying to go for, this naive girl growing into like herself. And I see little theme elements throughout the book that are like that, like Alina not even knowing really she has these powers in the beginning to accepting she has these powers and like growing and like embracing them by the end. So I can see that element of like a growth story, but her character was just kind of very unlikable and really frustrating. So I guess second main character would be the Darkling, and he's honestly not in the book that much, I feel like, especially not until the end, and I never felt like I understood him. He starts off as like, highly manipulative, like kind of mysterious. I just thought of him as like an angsty goth boy throughout this entire book. Even after I learned of his plot, I'm like, he's still just an angsty goth boy. Like, he's just going through a phase. It's fine. Okay. And I really felt like I could never understand him on any type of deep level. I wanted to learn more about what were his motivations besides like, yeah, I want to rule the world. That's pretty much his motivation. Yeah, I want to destroy everyone. But like at first I was like, yeah, so he wants to like take over the world and rule it, but then he's willing to kill his own people. And so it was really confusing of like, are you just like a psychopath, just want to kill everybody? Are you like Joffrey from Game of Thrones? Or are you like more like methodical, like I want my empire to flourish and build, which doesn't make sense if like he wants to expand the fold. I don't know. I was just really confused about like what his character wanted. And at the beginning I could just dismiss it as like, he's supposed to be like mysterious. But by the end I just wanted more, especially since he didn't feel like a really strong villain. And for me, usually my favorite characters in fantasy are the villains. And so yeah, I was just a little bit disappointed about like his character. For the background characters, I enjoyed most of them more, but I did feel like they kind of stuck in little boxes almost. So you had some characters I really loved. I gotta figure out the Darkling's mother's name because she was by far my favorite character. I am so sorry. This is why I've never said her name. She was by far my favorite character. Now, we don't learn if, like, the Darkling killed her for making Alina escape at the end. We don't learn about her fate in this book, so she may be dead. But I enjoyed her character. So, Genya, I believe is her name. She is a tailor that makes friends with Alina near the beginning. I mentioned her in previous clips, but she turns out to, like, kind of betray Alina, but she betrays her more for power, which I saw it coming because like there's little hints that Genya wants to be not just a servant, but wants to be more. So like I still found her character really interesting. There were a lot of like background small characters like Grisha. There were like Zoya, I think, or whatever her name was. She was really jealous of Alina for having the attention of the Darkling. She was kind of just bleh, like this jealous popular girl. There's like Marie and another girl that are summoners as well, but they're not like sun summoners. And they befriend Alina, but they're kind of like vague, petty, like mean girl type characters. None of the characters outside of like the Darkling, Alina, Mal, and the mother really had much of a big place in the book, to be honest. Speaking of Mal, I did like him much more by the end than by the beginning, because for the last like 100 pages, he plays such a big part. But I also feel like he was too good, too perfect. Like, he's just this supportive guy that loves Alina, and that's about it. They're in a romance more situation by the end of the book. And so that was just kind of like weird, especially since there were a couple scenes where she was like making out with the Darkling, so that was great. But as we learned out later, he was just manipulating her to like get her to trust him, so that was nice too. And I just didn't find the characters all that compelling. They were just kind of meh, and I hated Alina, and because the entire story was told through her eyes, that's not a good thing. So, next thing is the plot. The plot wasn't horrible. If you, like, remove Alina from the equation and all her horrible, stupid decisions and all her lack of motivation, I kind of liked the plot. The idea of this girl finding out she has abilities and learning how to work on her abilities and kind of being caught up in this fancy, royal type world where she's trained at this magic school, and she kind of falls into this romance with this like powerful man, and then she realizes he's actually evil, and so she like escapes and then has to like deal with him recapturing her, but then finally like coming into her own power and like taking over. Like, the plot itself is really interesting. If you were going to give me like a short synopsis, like a paragraph synopsis of what happens in this book, I'd probably be like, yeah, that's really cool. But I think it was just the execution of how the characters were handled and how like the character motivations came through that just was not so great for me. Now, I've been talking for way too long, and I feel like this video will be extremely long. I've never been so, like, opinionated on one of these videos before, so I am sorry. So let's get to final part. I just want to see what my predictions are for the next book, which is over there, and I'm not going to get it right now. Here's what I would like to see happen, and I doubt this will happen, but I'd love to see Alina start to become more motivated. Like, she actually starts to realize that the Darkling is so evil and that she may be the only one that can protect Ravka and the other countries from him. And I really want her to become like more confident and make her own decisions and become a stronger character. I would love that. I'd also love if the Darkling was not the ultimate villain. And that feels weird, but I really want to see like a bigger, greater power come in that kind of beats up the Darkling, and so the Darkling switches sides to the good side. I feel like that would be a more compelling like character arc for him, because so far he's just kind of like a vague villain, manipulative, but that's what I'm hoping will happen. Here's what I like my predictions. I'm pretty sure they're going to have like a rebellion group that's going to rise up against the Darklings, and then Alina's going to like either lead it or like be a big part of it. I really see like rebellion growing, okay? So I'm going to definitely predict that for the next book. There's going to be like some sort of rebellion, whether Alina forms it herself or she just joins it, something like that. I see more of like that love triangle played up in the sequel. I know the Darkling's evil, okay? But I feel like this book goes far too much in tropes. Oh, the sun just went away. I feel like this book relies way too much on teen tropes to have the love triangle completely go away. So either the Darkling gets back in the triangle and Alina, Mal, and the Darkling are like in a love triangle, or there's going to be another guy that's going to come in and be like a love triangle for like Alina and Mal. But I think it's going to be the Darkling personally. I definitely think a lot of the characters that were in this first book will come back and play a big part in the second book. I also think we're going to go bigger. So in this book, we centered completely on Ravka, and not only Ravka, but mostly just the big city, Alta. I don't remember what it's called. But we focused mostly on like the interior of Ravka. I feel like we're going to expand, whether that is exploring different places in Ravka or like going out to the broader countries. I'm pretty sure we're going to like leave. So there are my predictions. I've been talking for way too long and I feel like this video will be extremely long. I'll try to edit it down, but I have a lot of thoughts about this book. So I will see you all next week. Hopefully I'll be able to finish the second book and do another rant. Analytical review, but I will hopefully finish the next book next week, and I will see you all then. If you had like totally different thoughts from me, or if you think I'm way off base, let me know down in the comments. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on this book, and you know, what are your thoughts about the coming TV series that's based on it? I'm curious to see how much it like blends Six of Crows with this book, because I really enjoyed Six of Crows, this one not so much, but I love the world in both of them, so I'm curious to see how they blend that universe together and explore it. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification to be notified when I post. I post every Saturday at 6 p.m. Thank you for watching and have a great week. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.